Right now behind me is an empty Thalia Hall, but in just a few hours, this place will be packed to the brim, stuffed to the gills, for a sold-out show with the Hotelier, a famed 21st century emo band who are on the road celebrating 10 years of their iconic record, Home, Like No Place Is There. If you haven't heard it, it's 9 songs of loss, of death, of grief. It is heavy stuff, and yet it is an iconic record. If you like emo music and you haven't heard this, here's my interview with Christian from the Hotelier. It's Case the Producer here, Q101, Brian and Kinsey in the mornings. This is a case for a show in which I coerced management into letting me talk to my favorite bands of all time. And I'm sitting in the back of Thalia Hall with someone who I never thought I would have the opportunity to sit with, someone I'm so glad is back on the road. It is Christian from the Hotelier. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. I'm very excited. You guys have been away for quite some time, haven't been to Chicago, you were saying just before we started recording, since you toured with Jimmy World. I'm very happy to have you back. How does it feel to be back on the road touring Home Like No Place Is There?
I mean, it's been great simply because everyone's giving it such a good reaction. Like every show has just been so easy. We show up, we play the songs that we plan on playing, and everybody does the rest. So it's been easy and fun, and this is probably the most fun we've had on tour, I think, and maybe since the very early days when we were just like, excited to go to any city we've never been at before. Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you would have played Chicago?
I think the first time that we played Chicago was on our tour with State Lines. So Jade, who's in the band Oso Oso, is here. He's TMing for us.
I didn't know that's who I was texting all day, and that is suddenly very exciting for me.
Yeah. And it would have been his old band, State Lines, and us. And I remember we drove. I remember the drive. In fact, I was just writing about it. We drove from Akron, Ohio to Chicago overnight. Everyone was really drunk. We were in a short school bus, and I wrote Housebroken on the drive to Chicago for the first time.
You wrote that in a bus? That is incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have a lot of questions about the process of writing that album. I want to work backwards just a second, and we'll kind of end up at Home Like No Place Is There.
Sure.
Because you're someone who I feel is a little mysterious. You've been away from any sort of spotlight for a little bit, and then I'm scrolling through Twitter one day, and I see an article that claims that you're an accomplished poker player. Is this true?
The article might say that. Immediately following me doing the interview for that article, I lost $10,000 in that tournament. But
oh my God!
But I mean, that's the World Series of Poker. Like if you play the main event, it's a $10,000 buy-in. I think I sold some action, so I didn't have all of myself. But yeah, I did not win any money on that Vegas trip. But in general, I play a lot of poker, and being in gambling has been how I've been making my living through the pandemic. And it's like you deal with worse people quite often.
Worse than music people?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, different in different ways. But I mean, everybody in both worlds are freaks. So I kind of had this like skill set of dealing with freaks already. Yeah.
Okay, so explain to me, because, within our world of, let's say, underground music, just to put it in an umbrella term, there's scene politics. There's things that are cool, there's things that aren't cool. People get upset over odd things. In the world of poker, are there a lot of poker politics at play? Can you sort of explain if there's any sort of culture to it other than, and I say this with love, degenerates?
Yeah.
Is there any sort of culture to it?
Yeah. The baseline is different. Like liberalism is the baseline in the music world. That is not the case in the poker world. Everybody is quite conservative. And there are leftists and there are political arguments. The thing about poker players is that they all are very confident that they're right. They wouldn't be in poker if they didn't have like some thing in their brain telling them that they're always right.
I do love the idea of a nervous poker player, but that probably wouldn't be very effective.
Yeah. They would already be weeded out. So there's lots of arguments of like people being really, really sure and sounding really, really dumb. So that's there. there are scene politics, but nobody actually likes anybody. Like in the music world, you like people and you wanna like people. In the poker world, it's like nobody likes anybody. Yeah.
Good. That seems healthy. That seems like a really nice environment.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what you've been doing lately. Let's go back 10 years, 2014. Your band puts out what I say, and I say this to everybody, not just you sitting here, one of the greatest records of all time, In a Home Like No Place Is There. Talk about the point in your life when you were writing that record. You're coming off of, a 2011 release. There seems to be something happening in this world, dare I say, maybe it's a dirty term to you, but emo revival is starting to become a thing. And then all of a sudden, your band puts out this record and things, I would imagine, changed for you very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had always been interested in emo music. The process of writing the earlier stuff was like fairly collaborative. It was like all of the band putting their input in. And then when Home was coming together, it was like we almost weren't a band anymore then. And I was like, if we're ever going to write another record, it's going to have to come from me, because there was like very little momentum happening in the band at the time. So I was writing that quite often. I was living in a rat infested, not a rat infested, but a mouse infested house that was like completely trashed, and we weren't paying rent to the landlord. And I was not paying, like we were withholding rent illegally.
Good. This is healthy.
Yeah. And the people that lived there were piling trash into the backyard. It was a really bad place to live. And, I was just writing it there about the last couple of years of my life. It was kind of like a conversation with the record prior to it. It Never Goes Out that we wrote. I didn't really expect it to pop off in the way that it did. 2013 was when people started talking about emo revival in music media, but like prior to that, the DIY scene was like a lot of bands that you could define as emo, and people were talking about emo. If it wasn't pop punk, like the real DIY stuff was emo. So we were inspired by that, and I had more of a heavy hand on that record, and so the way that record shaped out kind of came from all those influences. Yeah,
for sure. Okay, so let me try to get inside your mind for a second, because I think the through line, whether you like the record, you dislike the record, there's a number of themes that are discussed on it, but it's a very vulnerable piece of music. You really, I think, bared your soul. Can you describe what it was like maybe the first time you put down something so vulnerable on paper? Did it scare you? Was it exciting? Was it for this project? Was it before? Because I just can't imagine. I'm somebody who considers myself to be a pretty open person, but you go to depth on this record that I would imagine were kind of uncomfortable when you started charting those waters.
Yeah, we had a really volatile group of friends in high school, like just emotionally volatile. And there were lots of conversations amongst us that felt really emotionally charged, but like grounded in like we love each other, but also like I hate you and I hate myself kind of stuff that would like go on there. And so like I kind of built a language for how I talked about it then. But there's this like sort of thing. I was just writing about this for an essay that I did for our Patreon, which we're announcing today. But there is like a mode that you go into in your writing where you are attempting to like set the conditions for all of these ideas to sort of flow out of you really fluidly in a way that you've might not have ever said it before. And like there's a lot of that was going on when I was writing the record. And so I don't know if you experienced this, but there's times in my life where I've said something and I just am like I start crying involuntarily.
Okay. I actually do follow, yes.
Yeah, it's like you don't know why it's causing you to, you just said something that you felt like just saying, and then you say it and you start crying. There's like a lot of like writing something and then be like, holy fuck. And I know you can't say that on the radio.
Yeah, that's okay.
But there was a lot of that that was happening while I was writing it, and it felt as though I was able to like process it in that time. There's like so much to talk about in it.
Yeah, so much stuff.
Yeah.
Were there songs that were harder to come together than others?
No, I mean, a lot of it came pretty fluidly. I was like fully on the like all I was doing was writing that record when I was writing it. So I've never really experienced writer's block as like a thing that's like held me up. It's just like, oh, I'm having a writer's block. I'm just going to like go for a long walk or stay up really, really late or whatever, whatever channels the thing. And it all just sort of came together.
Good. Okay, so you mentioned the process of writing Housebroken, and please, if you have any other what I would call wonderful anecdotes about songwriting, please mention them. But I have a specific question about the first song on the album, an introduction to the album.
Cool.
I've never been in a band. I don't write music. I don't understand music. I just know I like it. I've never heard a song structured like that one. I've never heard a song sonically like that one. One day that song doesn't exist. Walk me through the process to the final product.
Well, I wrote the guitar riff because I was trying to learn Blackbird by the Beatles, and I was playing it wrong. And then somebody told me, like, that's not how you play it. You play it like this. And I was like, great. Now I have a riff.
Awesome.
And then I had known that my process going into it, like, I think I must have had some sort of idea that I was like, I want this idea to open the record. Like, it feels nice to open the record in this way. Like, it's kind of cool. And then I knew that the whole thing was going to be written in this sort of flow. Like I had, like when you write something, you have some ideas of the words, and the words that were coming out were sort of like overlapping sentences and this really stream of consciousness thing. And I was like, okay, like this is how I'm going to write it. I'm going to just like write in a line and without periods. And like, that's like how the song's going to feel. And then everything else was, getting together with the band in the studio, being like, okay, here is the riff, here is the structure. Let's like fill it in with the jelly, which is
well done. A tasty sandwich that song is.
Yeah.
I very much enjoy it. Looking forward to singing it in the crowd tonight. We talked about the music media very briefly for just a second, sort of the idea of the emo revival. I think your band held an interesting place in that world, thanks to the likes of Ian Cohen, etc., who really respected your band. And sometimes this genre of music doesn't get the respect that I think it deserves. Was that at all odd for you? Like, you guys played Pitchfork Fest, and not a lot of emo bands are showing up on Pitchfork Fest. What was it like, maybe with some of your contemporaries, maybe like a Foxing or a Modern Baseball, bands that didn't get maybe the love from the press that they deserved, but every music guy was like, you got to check out the Hotelier. These guys rock.
How was it with them?
Was it ever awkward?
It wasn't for us.
Okay, good.
If people had feelings about it, they never said anything to us. But I mean, like, I don't imagine that. I mean, Modern Baseball also got a good response on Pitchfork, and Foxing got their own good responses on Pitchfork. It is, I don't know. It's just some opinions, right? Like, it's nice. I do think of Pitchfork as like a music media source that takes themselves very seriously, and takes art very seriously. And like, I think music needs more of that, in general. That said, it has like a sort of position because of that, where they try really hard, and they have like a position that I think is like a good one to have, that not a lot of other music media necessarily takes. So they sort of have like a stranglehold, and like that sort of scarcity can make people feel like pissed if like certain people get attention, other people don't. That's like the nature of scarcity. But I don't know. Maybe like, I don't think, I think people, I think amongst all of our bands, like, we all respect each other, and we respect what each other are doing. And even if, like there's like a sense that we all get each other's bands more than music media ever would.
For sure.
So like we get to talk with each other about that process and like kind of ignore what other people are saying sometimes, and having that sort of community where we can talk about that with each other like makes the whole like act of like being a business and promoting your business and through whatever means like a lot more bearable, I think. Yeah.
Okay. I got a few more questions for you. That's very, very well put there. Speaking of bands we respect, I don't know how online you are, but there's a tour that you guys were on that I think over the last decade has sort of started to live in infamy, and I'm very jealous of it because right now I'm 24. So this tour happened in 2015. I was 16 years old. I was living in Indiana. I didn't have the ability to get to the gigs the way I do now. And you guys went out on the road with La Dispute and Title Fight.
Yeah.
And I feel like that tour poster gets passed around a lot online now as like, oh my God, we had this and we don't know if we fully appreciated this or not.
Yeah.
What are your memories of a tour that now, Title Fight coming back, it's its whole other story, but you put that tour out now, it's like an arena tour.
Yeah,
it's like people are lining up down the block for that.
Yeah, I mean, when we got the offer, it was like we were so stoked. I mean, everybody, like, you know, we like half come out of pop punk and half come out of emo or whatever, and like everybody's always respected Title Fight as just like when you talk amongst bands, like nobody's ever like, oh yeah, that band's not good. Like it's always like
the band.
They
are
like,
the guys.
Yeah, they're just so important to like pushing artistically everybody else to be like, yeah, we actually have to be this good. And La Dispute was a band that it was interesting. Like I hadn't listened to a lot of La Dispute, but like I respected them and I knew I respected them. And there was a lot of their set that I learned to like a lot about what they're doing that I learned to respect. There's like a funny, I feel like we were touring with The World Is or something, and they said something about La Dispute where they said they do all these things that are supposed to be cringe, and it never is.
That is the greatest description of a band who I love.
Yeah.
That is the best description ever.
Yeah.
I shouldn't like them as much as I do.
Yeah.
I think if I go like long times without listening to them, I go, oh, they're probably not any good anymore. And then I hear them, I go, nope, still the best. Still just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, the secret sauce of both of those bands is that everybody in it is a good person.
Okay,
so,
good.
Like, you know, they just make genuine art, and it comes out in the way that it comes out as good art. Yeah.
I will warn you, La Dispute played this venue a year ago. It was like end of September, so right around the time we're doing this. I go to a lot of shows. It was my favorite show of 2022.
Yeah.
The table's set. I'm just saying, no pressure. But
Yeah.
real quick before we go, I want to touch on Goodness just because I think it's also such a phenomenal record. 2-year gap in between Home and Goodness. Did you have a ton of confidence going into Goodness, kind of riding this wave of momentum? Because that album sounds to me, not that you're, this, shoulder strutting, bravado kind of person, but that record sounds like a confident record with a band that believes in what they're doing.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I had a feeling when I was writing that record that some bands were toying with the idea of vulnerability, and they were toying with the idea of like softness. Like this was the time in which like shoegaze was like becoming like a thing.
It was post Hyperview. It was possibly the Title Fight effect.
Of course, yeah. So it was bleeding into like what people were doing, and I was like, damn, like the thing about shoegaze is that it has this aura of softness and vulnerability, and yet nobody's actually like, it's like kind of like everybody's eyes are like legitimately like eyes pointed down, like not showing anything. And I was like, all right, like, well, Hotelier did that album and we like demonstrated vulnerability. So like, what if we demonstrate the vulnerability of like softness and like deeper emotions, and we actually touch those things and make you and turn them on, as opposed to like touching them and like hiding them or something, you know what I mean? There was like some aesthetic thing that I was like, I'm not sure that I like how this is being done. I'm going to try to do it in my way. And that's kind of the motivation of Goodness. And so you had to do it unflinchingly, right? Like you can't go into it and be like, well, I'm not, so there was probably, yeah, and if you say it the way that you said it, I'm like, yeah, I like made a point to like unflinchingly write how I was writing for that record, and so maybe that's why. Yeah,
There's not a question here, but I think Two Deliverances is one of the most beautiful things ever written. I don't know how that came together, but it's just absolutely incredible, and it kind of floors me every time I hear it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that was like a collab with Ben, our guitarist. He like had that riff and he showed me the song, and I was like, I'm gonna like tear it apart, but we're gonna keep this riff, and that riff I love that riff that he wrote. Yeah.
I have one more question for you, but before we do that, by the time this comes out, you'll have the tail end of your East Coast tour to go. You'll have a whole slew of West Coast dates with Glitterer, net of Title Fight. What are the best ways people can support your band if they choose to do so? It sounds like you'll have a Patreon out too.
Yeah, we're doing it. So our label, which is me and Chad, and like we run a cooperative label, which is a structure that I've never seen done the way that we're doing it. It's basically a pool of money that cannot be pulled from except to spend on art. So like if like we ever dissolve the label, we have to like donate the entire pool of money that we've saved up.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and so we are doing this Patreon as a way to like put some money towards that, but also like an avenue for us to talk about art, because both of us love to talk about art and like talk about the world. And so that's something that we're doing with the Patreon. So yeah, signing up for the Patreon if you were interested in hearing me talk more would be one thing that could support us. Coming to the shows and buying merch, would be another thing. But I mean, just staying interested, and if we put something out, keeping an open mind that there's such a long space between our last record and maybe something that we might maybe do, and I'm not saying we are.
Okay, so this is sort of the last question. It's been 7 years since new Hotelier music.
Right. I mean, it's fun. I'll just be like flat out like, I love music. I love performing music. There's a lot about music that I don't enjoy, and I am more open to like blocking that out in order to like enjoy music in the way that I used to now than I have been in however many years. That said, like it's complicated, and motivating myself to do certain things is hard, and I have to make money also, and it's make money when you lock yourself in your house and try to write a record.
No,
so,
you're down $10,000 from the World Series of Poker. This record's got to be good if you write it.
Right. But yeah. So I don't know. There's so many things going into it. There's like a million things that I could talk about with it. But it's not an impossibility. It's just it's an idea we kick around. Yeah.
Good. Well, I hope one day some new material sees the light of day. In the meantime, I love what you've done. Thank you so much for joining me. This was fantastic. Go listen to The Hotelier.
Thank you.